What's going on everyone, my name is Tom from Dreadlabs and today I'm going to make these 5 Y2K shapes.
Dreadlabs.
Alright, it's been a while since I did an Illustrator tutorial, I think, and I got a lot of requests about Y2K shapes and how to make them, and I used to do this with Rave inspired shapes, and I thought let's just do one with Y2K inspired shapes. And the main idea of this is learn how to modify your shapes with some 3D effects in Illustrator, as well as how to install scripts in Illustrator as well, and use a couple of tools that you might have not heard of. And I think I'm just going to go over this from left to right, and we'll see if we learn some new things along the way. So yeah, let's get started. So before we actually start off, I just wanted to let you know you can get the project file for this tutorial and all of my other tutorials by becoming a patron. Check out the link down in the description or stick around until the end of the video to learn more. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is create this like 3D disc thing. And the way we're going to start this is by grabbing the ellipse tool, and we're going to make an ellipse from the center on out. And let's make this thing a 150 pixels. So I'm just going to go in the properties here on the left, make sure that this thing is clicked so we can just type in a number. And now the width and the height will be set to 150. Then we're going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path. And with the offset, basically you're going to expand the shape a little bit. So we're going to do that with a offset of 50 pixels and click OK. And I want to do this a couple of more times. So you want to go to Path, Offset Path again. And I did a custom shortcut, as you can see. So if I press Ctrl 5, the offset path will be visible. So if we select all of this, let's see. Let's do one more. Now let's select all of the ellipses that we made, or every circle that we made. And then we're going to go to the Shape Builder tool, which is over here. You can also press Shift M on your keyboard. And as you can see, as I hover over these parts with my mouse, these get highlighted. Essentially what you want to do is hold Alt on your keyboard, or Option if you're on a Mac, and click on every other circle like this. And now that I look at it, we need one more. So let's just do this one more time. Hold Alt or Option on keyboard and then click on every other circle. So now we have like this kind of like dartboard kind of thing, I'm not sure. Anyways, let's select all of this and group together. And just for the sake of, let's just click on the Unite Build. Alright, so the next step is to make this 3D. And the way we're going to do that is by clicking on Effect, 3D Materials. And you have this menu when starting from, I think, Illustrator 2022. If you have an older version of Illustrator, you should just be seeing this menu. But if you're on a newer version of Illustrator, all you need to do is go to 3D Classic and click on Rotate Classic. And if you're on an older version, this should just pop up immediately. So let's just click on Rotate. And this brings up a 3D menu where you can just basically determine the position. So yeah, we kind of know how to make this 3D already now, but where the magic happens is with the perspective. So if you up the perspective, you can really see that Y2K look kind of start developing. And the reason that this is happening is because most of these Y2K aesthetics are very inspired by these wide angled lenses and stuff like that. You can also see that in 3D graphics as well. So that's something that you want to take into account when making Y2K inspired graphics. So if you want to modify this later, because if we go to outline view, you can still see that this is the dartboard thing that we made before. So you want to go to Window, Appearance, and as you can see, the 3D Rotate Classic is here, and you can just modify it however you like. I'm pretty okay with this actually. You can also just do it like this, but if you go too far out, you can see that the shape is being cut off. So yeah, I would say be aware of that. So I'm quite happy with this. So what I'm going to do now is, if you want to like actually use this, I'm going to extend this. Just going to go like Object, Expand Appearance. So let's just grab this and put it into another layer so we can actually see what's going on here, because it's now a group and you can kind of already see like this weird rectangle forming. So essentially what you need to do is ungroup this group, and then go to Object, Clipping Mask, Release. And in the layer menu on the right, you can see that there's a path, and you can just delete that because it's not any visible thing. It's just whatever was used to create this 3D effect. And then you're left with your group, and you can just make this a little bit smaller and align it to the center of your artboard. All right, so the next one we're gonna do is essentially something similar, but I want to show you another technique on how to make 3D looks without like the 3D effect here. So what we're gonna do is make an ellipse as well. And what we're gonna do is add some anchor points by going to Object, Path, Add Anchor Points. And as you can see, we now have an anchor point in between every other point. And let's just do it one more time. And what we can do is delete this one, I think. And I'm going to switch over to a stroke, which you can also do by pressing Shift X on your keyboard, by the way. Let's make the stroke a little bit thicker. And let's go and click on the stroke here in the properties menu and add an arrowhead. And we want the arrowhead to actually like point over the end of the point, which you can do by this align button. And the arrowhead is a little bit too big for my taste, so let's just make it a little bit smaller as well. Alright, so now at the end, let's just round the corner off, I guess. Okay, so we now have this like nice circle arrow. Let's go to Object, Path, and Outline Stroke. And I want to select the points of the arrowhead here. So let's just click on it. And if you grab the direct selection tool or press A on your keyboard, let's just grab the outer points and round those edges up a little bit like that. Now we can go to the Pathfinder here, which you can find under Window Pathfinder, by the way, if it's not here. Let's click on Unite. And then we're going to press the letter E on our keyboard to bring up the free transform tool, which you can also find here. So what we can do with this is basically, if we hold our mouse over the corners, you can see these 4 arrows appearing. And once you press Control, you can see that you have like this 3D control over it. You can kind of like skew it if you're familiar with that in Photoshop. And if you hold Alt, it will skew from the center. And if you hold Shift, you can get like this perspective warp tool thing going on. As you can see, like along the edges on the square around this, you can kind of see what's happening. You're essentially making this a 3D plane, if that makes sense. So if we do it like this, you can kind of get that same perspective like thing going on. And let's just scale it down. And there we have it. Actually, I think this one worked out a little bit better than this one because I didn't really round the edges here. Anyways, so yeah, going to the free transform tool and then basically playing around with the Control or Command, Alt or Option and Shift buttons while dragging the outer corners in can get you some pretty cool results as well. So for the third one, you're gonna need a script, and that is the Metaball script. You might be familiar with this already. But if you're not, essentially this is a script made by someone else that helps you create this cool effect around around 2 ellipses. I'll put a link down in the description on where to download this. Essentially what you need to do is download this link right here, and I'm gonna show you a little bit what this looks like. Essentially what you're going to be downloading is this script. Essentially you can just link these circles together. So once you've downloaded the script, you can see like you have a folder containing all of these files. So essentially what you need to do is to grab the Metaball and the Metaball arc. It depends on which one you like more. And what you want to do is go to your PC, go to Program Files, to Adobe, and go to your current version of Illustrator, go to Presets, and click on Scripts, and then paste them here. All right, so now that they're in here, all you need to do is save up your file in Illustrator and restart Illustrator. So let's just do that, and then I'll be back in a second. Awesome. So if you want to see if this worked out, go to File, Scripts, and if the Metaball is in here, you've done this successfully. For the next one, what we're going to do is make a circle, and we're going to make that 250 by 250, and we'll just give this the same color. And what I essentially want to do is hold Alt, drag out another circle, hold Shift so that it's in place, and make sure that it aligns perfectly with the circle next to it. And I want to repeat this one more time, and instead of like just dragging it out again, what I can do is press Control or Command and D on your keyboard. This basically repeats the last transform action that you used. So again, let's select all of these 3 here, hold Alt or Option on your keyboard and drag them to the bottom while holding Shift. And if they align with the rest of the circles, you've done it correctly. And in order to repeat this one more time, let's just press Ctrl or Command D on the keyboard, and let's group all of these circles together and align them to the middle of the artboard. Let's just ungroup everything for a second. Grab these three because we don't really need them. And what we need to do is select the rest of these. Go to Object, Path, Offset Path. And let's just do an offset of -50 pixels. So with all of these inner circles selected, I'm just going to go press Ctrl X or Command X if you're on a Mac. We can just delete the excess circles here and press Ctrl or Command F to paste all of these circles in place. So now what we're going to do is grab the pen tool and we're going to make one point in the very center of the artboard. Right here. That's all we need to do. Then we need to select the inner circle in the middle and the circle that's out here on the edges. And you want to go to File, Scripts, Metaball. And let's check on the preview so you can see what it is doing. Essentially, you can just make a Metaball effect right here. And depending on your rate, you can thin or thicken these lines here. Now looking at it, I think we made the circles a little bit too small with the offset. So let me just fix that real quick. Alright, so now this is done with an offset of 30 pixels instead of 50. Let's select these two again, go to File, Scripts, Metaball, and I think this is okay. And I still need to add the anchor point in the middle of the scene here. So now what you want to do is select the Metaball middle thing, the two ellipses, and press the letter R on your keyboard. And this will bring up the Rotate tool. And essentially you can just rotate everything around this anchor point here. And we want this anchor point to be here on the point that we just made in the center of the artboard. So let's click there once. And now let's hold Alt or Option on our keyboard and click on the anchor again. Twice actually. And this brings up the rotate menu. And what we need to do is grab an angle of 90 degrees or -90 degrees, doesn't really matter. And instead of clicking on OK, let's just click on Copy. And again, this is a transform action, so instead of doing this all over again, we can just press Ctrl or Command D on our keyboard. And there we have it. Alright, so the next one is a little bit of a weird one, as I am not sure if I can recreate this one like properly 100%. But this is just to showcase a really cool tool that can make you some organic shapes if you want to. So let's draw a circle from the center and out. And make sure that's in the center actually. Alright, so the tool I'm going to showcase is the twirl tool. And you can find it under the width tool here. So essentially what this thing does is it is a brush and it basically rotates like the path. So if I go around this, as you can see, we can create some really cool like organic shapes. So what I want to do is if I hold Alt on my keyboard or Option if you're on a Mac, and you can basically scale the brush up and down. So I want to make my brush around the same size as the circle. And in order to create a like uniform circle, you can just hold the Shift while after you pressed Alt. And if we brush over this now, you can kind of see that like weird like droplet thing appearing. So that's really cool. One thing, if it goes a little bit too fast, because as you can see this goes really quickly, you can double click on the twirl tool, and in the twirl rate let's just set this to like 5 degrees. And this just makes everything go a little bit slower, so essentially you have a little bit more control over what you're doing. So let's scale this up a little bit more. As you can see, we get this like droplet figure. And essentially what I did in order to create this line is grab the whole selection, go to Path, Offset Path, go in like, I don't know, maybe 60 pixels. Depends on the size of your shape, of course. And let's just click on this anchor point and on this anchor point and delete them. And we don't need the rest of this path right here. So basically we have this line here. And instead of having a fill, let's just go and give this a stroke with the color of the background. And if you don't know how to do that, let's just make sure that the stroke is on the foreground and hold Shift while having the eyedropper tool and click on the color. So let's just make this stroke a little bit larger. And instead of uniform, let's do the width profile 1. And essentially this gives you like some nice shadows. And if you want to have this in a different place, what you can do is grab the rotate tool, set your anchor point somewhere and see if it works better right there. Alright, so it's a little bit different. I don't really like the tail of this, but this was just to showcase the twirl tool actually, and this gives you some organic results, so I would highly recommend just experimenting with it and see whatever you can come up with. Alright, so the last one is a little bit of a combination of things we've done in the other shapes, but I really liked how this turned out, so I thought let's just do it one more time. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that your stroke color is the same color as the dark blue that we've been using. So let's just go to the eyedropper tool and hold shift so that it doesn't change to the fill color like this. Then grab a rectangle and let's just up the stroke of that. So with the direct selection tool, you want to go and grab the 2 left points and click on this little scissor thing that says cut path at selected anchor points. Essentially we can just delete this line now, which leaves us with this rectangle. Alright, so let's click on the stroke menu here in the appearance or properties panel. Let's add an arrowhead and up the stroke a little bit while scaling down the arrow. And again, we're gonna go and make sure that this aligns over the rest of the path like this. I think we need to make this a little bit higher. So what we're going to do now is basically grab the rotate tool again. We need to experiment a little bit on where we want to place the anchor point, but I'm going to click here. Okay, so after I started dragging, I'm going to hold Alt or Option on my keyboard, and you can see I'm making a duplicate. And I'm going to hold Shift so that it's actually an exact 180 degrees that I'm spinning it in. And now it's just a matter of like placing it in the proper like place or space, I guess. So what you want to do is basically scale this thing a little bit in order to see what works best. And I think something like this would work. So now we want to go and grab the direct selection tool and grab the 2 outer points of the rectangle and round off the corners like this. And of course we also want to have the rounded edges at the end of the stroke here. And now looking at it, I think it needs to be a little bit like flatter, like this maybe. And but one piece of advice is the corners are looking a little bit wonky right now, and that's because it's not perfectly rounded off. It's like a little bit more of an ellipse instead of a circle. So I would always say try to work this out before you actually round off the corners. So maybe like this. And now let's try that again with the corners. Now I feel like this is a little bit better. Alright, so if you're satisfied with your S, what you're gonna do is go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. And let's just flatten all of this with the Pathfinder. And finally we're gonna go to Effect, 3D Materials, 3D Classics, and Rotate. And again, if you're on an older version of Illustrator, this rotate should just be here. And now it's a matter of seeing which rotation position looks the coolest. And I think something like this works really well. Looking at this, I just realized that I haven't really rounded off the edges here, and before we actually apply the effect, you can still do that, as you can see here. So if you press Ctrl or Command Y, you can still see that the outline of this arrow is still the same position that we had it in before we applied the 3D effect. So let's just select all of the points and round them off a little bit, and then just press Ctrl and Y or Command Y again. And as you can see, this works pretty well. And again, once you're satisfied with everything, go to Object, Expand Appearance. And then one more time, let's ungroup this. And then go to Object, Clipping Mask, Release. And then we can just release that weird square around our S right here. So there you have it, guys, 5 Y2K shapes and how to make them. So if you want to get the Illustrator file for this tutorial or any of my other tutorials, I have Photoshop files, Cinema 4D files, After Effects files, Illustrator files. If you want to get all of those, you can become a patron of mine. So in order to give you guys a video for free on a weekly basis, I need to maintain a reasonable income in order to do this full time. In order to do that, I started a Patreon where you can get access to all of the project files from all of my tutorials. And besides that, you can also get a 15% discount in my asset web store if you become a patron, as well as an exclusive Discord role in the Dreadlabs Discord community. And if you go 1 tier up, you'll even get access to exclusive video tutorials such as how to make a Y2K rave flyer. So if this is something you're interested in, there's a link down in the description, and besides getting access to all of these cool perks, you also really help me out supporting and maintaining Dreadlabs. If you don't have the budget to become a patron yourself, that's also completely fine, of course. Leaving a like, a comment and a subscribe if you haven't already also does a lot. So once again, a big shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for watching. This was Tom from Dreadlabs tuning out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.